Kumlan Ablak Gemara, it's Erev Yom Kippur, Tovshin Pei Beis, we're Masechta Beis, that says Vov Omid Aleph. The Mishnah is telling us that there are certain things you're permitted to carry on Yom Tov, and the general rule is anything that is final product you can carry on Yom Tov. It doesn't have to only be food; it can be other items as well. And so the Mishnah continues and says, "But a sandal, have a loy sandal hamasubah, not a shoe that's full of nails. And why not sandal hamasubah? A sandal that is full of that's locked down with full of nails. My time malay, these very white sandals. An incident that happened. We learned Masechta Shabbos, where they were threatened by the enemy. They all went into hiding, and the shoes were facing towards the. They made a siman which way the sandals were facing, and then somebody by mistake put his sandal the wrong way. They thought that it looked like it was facing out. Somebody left. He might have been caught. So the was a mad rush, and they all crushed each other. Many more passed away from they're from the enemies. Therefore, they made a rule on a Shabbos and Yom Tov you cannot wear it. I'm going to buy it. Sandal hamasum also not allowed to wear it. But mutal talk. It's not muktzah. You're not move it around. Also, now you're not allowed to wear it. You made a special takana because of that incident that occurred. But mutal talk. You're allowed to move it on Shabbos because still consider keli. How do I know that? The Mishnah goes out to tell you, Ein Mishalchim, do not send these kind of sandals to someone else on Yom Tov. Now, Isaac also told you not even move them. Hashtal to Tulios, you're not even move them because the Muktzah, Mishalchim, boy, you need to tell me you're not allowed to send it to somebody else. Obviously, you're not allowed to. So it must be that's not Muktzah. Then the Mishnah says also,
sorry, can I ask?
Yeah.
Is that referring to a takana in general, not to wear those sandals, or what's it got to do with Yom Tov?
That sandal was only Shabbos and Yom Tov because of that incident that happened, even though you would think what's the difference for a weekday or Shabbos and Yom Tov, but because that was like a reaction to a particular story. We don't have those kind of sandals. They're very, very wide, and they're just all nailed in. The top parts are all nailed in, and the crush was because they're very wide as well. It wasn't just a nail. It's a type of sandal which we don't have.
So what's it to do with Yom Tov? Yeah.
So the takana was on Shabbos, and whenever you make a takana on Shabbos, Yom Tov is automatically included.
No, why is it for Shabbos? Why not a weekday? Why not? If those sandals are killing people.
Because of that story. Only because there was no, logically it makes no difference between weekday or Shabbos, you would think.
Yeah.
And yet they didn't ban it during the week. They only banned it on Shabbos because of that particular incident. So this is like something very rare where they made a takana because of an event that happened. There's no real reason behind it. Because the event happened, and they said, that's it, no more. And because it happened also a particular time, not only the particular product, a particular time, they only banned that product. The logic behind it, don't know. Why didn't they ban it altogether? I don't know.
Yeah. Because Dan wasn't a Rav. Because Dan wasn't a Rav then.
That's true. But it must have been pretty common, that kind of sandals in those days. Well, nor a shoe that isn't tougher, that isn't sewn together properly. And either it's not sewn at all or it has a few stitches on the side and the front, but nothing major. No, it's very easy to slip off. So therefore, you're not allowed to, again, it cannot be worn on Shabbos and Yom Tov. It's not really much of a shoe. The chiddush here is, even though the noki b'sichi, you have some little wooden pegs here holding together, or just a few little stitches here and there, it's not called a shoe, and therefore you cannot send it. Rabbi Yehuda says not even a manolov, not even a minolov, not even a white shoe. Tanya Rabbi Yehuda says a black shoe is all right, you can send, but you cannot send a white shoe. Why? Because in his town where he lived, they didn't wear white shoes, they wore black shoes. So he still have to then go ahead and Beitza Daf. You then have to put this mixture on from some kind of a dark dirt that will blacken the shoe, and therefore it's not a complete shoe. Rabbi Yossi says you're not allowed to even use a black shoe either. And they should to make it shine and smooth, and therefore still another step in the process. So right now it's not a completed shoe, and people won't wear it, so you're not allowed to send it on Yom Tov. And no argument. In this place, bisra letachas. So you have the hide. So if the hide is this part of the hide that's facing exposed to the air, and there's part of the hide that's facing the flesh. The part of the hide that's facing the flesh is not smooth. So if the part of the hide that's facing the flesh if the part that's facing the flesh is inside the shoe, and the part that's facing the outside is outside the shoe, then that's it. It's smooth and everything else, nothing else to be done. That's Rabbi Yehuda's region. The Beitza region was the other way around. So therefore, the part outside the external of the shoe was the part of the hide that was facing the flesh. So you had to still smooth it out. There's still another step in the process. So therefore, you couldn't send that shoe. It wasn't really a shoe yet. Zeh the Mishnah gives us a rule: kosher ne'esim beyond anything which is complete in Yom Tov, and you can enjoy on Yom Tov. That is permitted. You can wear it. Then you're allowed to. So the Gemara of Sheshes is Shadul Rabban, and he actually allowed the rabbi to send a pair of tefillin to somebody on Yom Tov. But how can you? We don't wear tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Didn't we learn kol shnei oisim b'Yom Tov? Anything that you can use on Yom Tov, mishal chinoisei. So what does that mean? Hachakam. The Gemara said you misunderstood the Mishnah. Kol shnei oisim b'chol. Anything which you can use the way it is during the week, even though on Yom Tov you don't. Mishal chinoisei b'Yom Tov. And you can send it then on Yom Tov as well. So in other words, when the Mishnah says Yom Tov, it doesn't mean that you can actually use it, wear it on Yom Tov. It means anything that the way it is, it's a complete object. And you can use it, then you can send it on Yom Tov as well. Why? Because if you wear it on Yom Tov, you're not doing an Avera. We don't follow this like about Toys or anything else. You just don't have to. It's a sign. You don't have to wear it on Yom Tov. And therefore, you can send it on Yom Tov. So in other words, the way Rashi learns here is that there's no Isser wearing it on Yom Tov. There's actually machlekes how we understand. When the Torah says, you have one sign already on Shabbos and Yom Tov, we don't need another sign. So does that mean we don't need another sign? So there's no Isser, but you don't need to, or is it more like, maybe it's like about Tosef or something if you wear it. So clear from here that it seems only that you don't need to wear it on Shabbos and Yom Tov, not that it's forbidden. So if I buy a tefillin, now that we're talking about tefillin, name of Milsa. Let me tell you something. That's very odd why the Gemara puts it here. He just happened to mention tefillin. What Abai is about to tell us, he could have told us in Sechta Erevin when we discussed these things about wearing tefillin on Shabbos. You find them in the street and so on. Or in Menachah, we actually talk about the law of tefillin. For whatever reason, Abai decided to insert it here. So the Gemara said, I'll tell you something about tefillin. How you, Baba, that you're traveling with tefillin, Barosh, and you're wearing tefillin on your head, B'shakal Chamba, and suddenly the sun set. Manicha Yodelem, what do you do? So you place, according to Machlekes Rashi and Tosfos, Rashi learns we're talking about it's now Shabbos, and what are you supposed to do? Tosfos learns we're talking about during the week, and at night you don't wear tefillin. So what do you do? He's Manicha Yodelem, put your hand on them so nobody can see that you're wearing tefillin. And we want to safe, we want to protect the tefillin and make sure that it arrives safely. Actually, the wait till you arrive home, and because putting your hand on top of it is not the normal way of you're hiding the tefillin, and carrying the tefillin on your head is not the normal way of carrying it. If you want to carry it, you put it in the bag and you carry it. But wearing it is not the normal way, so it's kala achayad, and you can continue traveling until you go home. Example number 2. You were out in the Beitza Medrash, which the Beitza Medrash seems to be also outside of the cities. You don't want to leave it. You feel you have suddenly realize Shabbos, the Kiddush all of Hayom, and Kiddush all of Hayom definitely is an expression when Shabbos arrives. So what do? You don't want to leave it out there unprotected. Place your hand on it until you arrive home. Tosfos says there's no point in having two cases saying the same thing. That's why Tosfos learns that the Beitza Medrash is definitely talking about Shabbos, but the first case is talking about evening. Says the Gemara Moshe, Ravika asked the question, you were traveling with tefillin b'rosh, and you had tefillin on your head. The Kiddush Olav Hayayim, and now suddenly it became Shabbos, Maniach Yodei Alei, and place your hand. It says, this is Beitza says, place your hand in it. Don't bring it to your house. The very first house beyond the walls, in the confines of the wall, so now it's protected. Deposit your tefillin there. We don't give you a license just to walk with it willy-nilly until you get to your home. So not like a buyer. And then it says, you're sitting in Beitza Medrash with Kiddush Olav Hayom. See, in this Beitza, in both instances, it says with Kiddush Olav Hayom. Clearly, we're talking about Shabbos arrive. So a kasha labaya. Like kasha, it's not a problem. If the house next to the wall, the tefillin will be protected, then no problem. Leave it in the house next to the wall. However, Ababai is talking about a case, if the house next to the wall, you don't know who lives there or it's not protected, a Goyish house, then bring it to your home. Says the Gemara, if the house next to the wall is not protected, then why, Dafka, if you happen to be wearing it, suddenly Shabbos arrives, continue wearing it. Take a bigger chiddush. Even if you found it lying on the ground. And we learned more Erev, you find tefillin lying on the ground, put it on you, as if you're wearing as a lavush, a malbush, and then walk with it home. But now we learned, if somebody finds tefillin, We learned if somebody finds tefillin, bring them in, one pair at a time. So what's Abaye's chiddush? In fact, Abaye could have said it'd be greater. That even if you found it on the ground, not just if you happen to be wearing it and suddenly, you enter Shabbos, like kasha. So he said it's not a problem. Why not? So he says here because there's two things that we need to protect the tefillin. We need to protect the tefillin that animals shouldn't go ahead and eat it or lick it, and that ganavim shouldn't steal it. So if it's this first house next to the wall is protected in every single sense, then leave it next to the wall. Abaye's case is talking about where it's protected from animals because it's in a house, but it's not protected from ganavim. And Abaye's chiddush here is that even those pregnant animals, since it's not protected from ganavim, we give you a license to bring it home. Now, why is that a chiddush? Maud, and I would have thought, interesting what it says here. Roiv listim yisroninu. Most robbers, imagine, were Yidden. We had it in Bobasser and other places. And Yiddish Ganovim, they still have some kind of code of ethics, and they will not in any way denigrate the children. They won't even take it, they won't denigrate it. So therefore, we would have thought that in that case, you can also leave it at that house near the wall. No. If it's not P'nek Ganovim, bring it home. That's a Bayit Chiddush. Yeah. Hadna loch beya, that finishes the first parak of beya. Now we start the second parak of beya, which is we start off with the inyan of eruv tavshilin. Eruv tavshilin, we'll explain a bit more tomorrow, but eruv means to mix the cooked items. So we already had a machlekes the Gemara Psachim between Rabba and Rab Chizda. According to Rab Chizda, tzarchei Shabbos nasim yontif. B'hatayri, you're allowed to cook from yontif to Shabbos. There's no issue whatsoever. The Rabbanon didn't want you to because you'll be preoccupied in preparing. You won't enjoy Yom Tov. Rabba holds Mahatayr, it's forbidden to prepare from Yom Tov to Shabbos, let alone from Yom Tov to the weekday. But we have a concept called hoyel. Since if guests would arrive, you can have it ready. So therefore, you should you're allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos because maybe guests will arrive. And the difference in halacha between the two is, if you hold like Rabba, then you have to make sure that you cook it during the day so that there's time for guests to arrive and eat it. If you hold like Rab Chizda, you can cook it 5 minutes before Shabbos. And we don't care if it's if guests, if there's any time for the guests to eat it, because it's not dependent on guests. So the Mishnah says, so what do you do? You make an Eila Tavshilin to overcome the Isa de Rabbanan. And this way, whatever we're doing on Yom Tov is we're mixing the food together. The food you're cooking on Friday for Shabbos is a continuation of the food you cooked prior to Yom Tov. So Eila Tavshilin, you mix the food together. Or Eila Tavshilin means that you mix the days, Shabbos and Yom Tov together, it becomes one long day. So the Gemara Mishnah Yom Tov Cholei Shabbos. If Yom Tov falls on a Friday, you should not go from the outset and start cooking the Yom Tov to Shabbos from Yom Tov to Shabbos. Aval Mashal Yom Tov, you're allowed to cook for Yom Tov. Beim Hoysir Shabbos. You have leftovers. You're allowed to have leftovers for Shabbos. Whether we're talking about one pot or many pots, we'll see later in the Gemara in the next few days. But Oyser Tavshil Me'erev Yom Tov. You're allowed to cook. What you do is you make a cooked item for Yom Tov, v'seimich olav l'Shabbos, and then you using that's called erev tavshil. You rely on that Friday you can cook for Shabbos. Why does that help? We'll soon see in the Gemara. The Shami says shnei tavshilin of Shabbos that you should have 2 different cooked items because Yom Tov generally you cook more than one item, so therefore and Shabbos you usually cook more than one item, so therefore you should have 2 cooked items. Representative and Basil says that no, that even tafshalech, even one cooked item, and even though there are others that say you have to bake as well, so halachically 1 cooked item is enough, but it became the halach of them. That's technically b'diavad. However, we do a baked item and a cooked item, so we have like a challah and we have an egg that we put aside or a piece of fish. And Vishavin, they'll agree, but we have a fish and an egg on top of it. If you have an egg and then you smooth it, if you have a fish and you smooth an egg over it, that's considered when they say fry, they say, that's considered 2 different cooked items. Even Besham is good enough. What happens? You consumed the air of tafshilin before you had a chance to cook for Shabbos. Friday morning, you suddenly ate it. Or you lost it. You cannot rely on it. It's no longer there. Even though the chatchili you need a kazayas, but if you had it and then you ate most of it until you realized just before you took the last bite, then you can rely on that. So the Gemara, how do you know? It doesn't mean how do you know, because the whole thing of Eir Tashilin with the Rabbanon, but on what basis did you rely on? So Gemara says, "I'm Shmuel, I'm across the pasuk Zocher es Yom Shabbos lekacha." You should always remember the day of Shabbos. Zocherehu, do something to remember it. Ma'acha shebol hashkicha, because you might ultimately forget it. If Yom Tov falls out on a Friday, then you'll be so preoccupied with Yom Tov, and you eat so much food on a Yom Tov, you might leave nothing for Shabbos. Or if you leave them for Shabbos, it won't be the respectable food. So the Torah says, Zocher es Yom Shabbos. Remember, do something to remember the Shabbos by making the Erev before Shabbos, for Yom Tov. So you remember it. Because the only reason why you're doing it the day before Yom Tov is in order to cook for Shabbos. So you're already remembering Shabbos. It's only in a smachta because we actually use this that every day of the week you should remember Shabbos. Like the Shammai, we'll see later the way he behaved. So he went further. My timer, what's the logic? What's the reason behind the Erev Tavshilin? Says the Gemara, read the pasuk Zocher Yom Shabbos from making Kiddush. So what does it mean? It's in order to remember the Shabbos. So we want you to make sure you leave behind good food for Shabbos. So if you do an activity before Yom Tov, it's to remind you, hey, I have to make sure I have something good for Shabbos. And you won't consume all your good food on Yom Tov and leave nothing for Shabbos. And you need Yafil Shabbos, Umanu Yafil Yom Tov. You have something made for Shabbos and something nice for Yom Tov. Rav Ashi says it's not to remember Shabbos, it's actually to remember Yom Tov. To give cover to Yom Tov. How's that? Because remember, the law is according to everybody not allowed to cook from Yom Tov to the weekday. According to Chizas Matayda, according to Rabbis with the Rabbanon, because we say the concept of Hoyle if you have guests. But we don't want you to cook from Yom Tov to the weekdays. So if we disallow you to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos, you can remember, oh, Madas to Shabbos, I cannot cook or bake. Surely I cannot cook or bake for a weekday. So I want people to say, in Yom Tov l'Shabbos, you don't cook from Yom Tov Shabbos, you don't bake from Yom Tov Shabbos. Surely Yom Tov l'Chol. Surely from Yom Tov to weekday. I don't want you to do. So now we learn. So in other words, one opinion said the main thing is to promote Shabbos. That's the opinion of Rava. And Rav Ashi said the reason is to promote weekday. To promote weekday. And my nafkamina between these two reasons, the nafkamina is whether can you do it 2 days before Yom Tov, or it have to be mamish erev Yom Tov. It's to remember Shabbos. You have to do as close as possible to Yom Tov, so that when you cook for Yom Tov, you cook also for Shabbos. But if it's to show how important Yom Tov is, it doesn't matter when you do it. You did something to demonstrate how important Yom Tov is, and you cannot even cook or bake for Shabbos without this. Sure, they won't cook from Yom Tov to the weekday. And then after minute, for example, talks about on Sukkot. If Sukkot is Thursday, Friday, and then Shmini Atzeres is Thursday, Friday, do you have to make an Erev Tavshilin each week, or you just make it before Sukkot, and that's sufficient for the entire Yom Tov? The halach is we want every single week, but by the average, you can rely on the one you did at Sukkot, if you had in mind. Says the Gemara, Tanan, in our mission, it says, you must make it at Yom Tov, the Shabbos. And you cannot do it on Yom Tov proper, let's say, first thing in the morning. So, according to Rashi, the whole reason is, the whole reason is that people should appreciate how important Yom Tov is, that you're not allowed to cook for Yom Tov the Shabbos. So, therefore, you are not... and you cannot cook unless you started the weekday and whatever you're doing on Yom Tov for Shabbos, a continuation for that. But you're not starting. Okay, it shows you how important Yom Tov is, and you won't cook from Yom Tov to the weekday. Makes sense why you have to start before Shabbos, before Yom Tov. Makes sense. Sorry. According to Rav Ashi, said the whole idea is to put your point on Yom Tov is okay. I do it before Yom Tov. According to Rav, the whole idea is to make sure you have enough food left over for Shabbos. As long as you make the Erev Tavshilin before you sit down for your meal on Friday morning, before you sit down, then you'll make sure that you'll leave enough good food for Shabbos as well. Why do you have to do it before Yom Tov? Not even on Yom Tov proper. So you're right. You could have done it technically on Yom Tov proper. You know why we make you do before Yom Tov? Gzeda, we are worried if you're going to rely until Yom Tov itself. Shema Yifasha. Maybe you'll be negligent because on Yom Tov proper, you're busy getting ready for the meal, and therefore you might forget or deliberately forget, or you be negligent. And we have another Tana who actually brings it from a pasuk, like a smachta from a pasuk. So we have the two Amoraim who base themselves on the idea of Zohar, you should remember, Shabbos or Yom Tov, and then we have a Beitza who brings it from somewhere else. It says in the pasuk, Eis Asher Teifu. It says in the pasuk when he talks about the man, he says to them, is tomorrow, Es Asher Teifu, bake what you bake, and whatever you cook, Vashelo, you cook, and on Friday. Now, what kind of expression is that? Just say bake and cook today. So why did it say why double the talk? Because says he wants to tell you that bake from what you're allowed to bake and cook from what you're allowed to cook. What do you mean? Now, not all Fridays can you bake or cook for Shabbos. If Friday was a Yom Tov, then you cannot bake or cook for Shabbos. But if you want to cook on Yom Tov, then you have to continue cooking what you started cooking before Yom Tov. You can bake if you started before Yom Tov, before Friday. Because that's where the basis for Eif Hashem from the Torah is. So this pasuk here, Eis Asher Toifu. Trying to learn. Ma'aseh but Rabbi Lezer. There was an incident of Rabbi Lezer. So Yoshev B'Deidos Kol Yom Kula. The entire day of Yom Tov they were in shul, and he was giving a pupul and a drasha b'hilchos Yom Tov, the laws of Yom Tov. First, he had all the students there, but there's a mitzvah of eating on Yom Tov as well. Yotzla Kata Shena. The first group went out early, and to leave, they left the shir. They were home to eat with their families. Amar, he said, Halolu bale pizza. So these people here, they must have giant barrels of wine or something to drink, and therefore they have to go home early, or all kinds of, a lot of food, and therefore they have to go home early to eat. Got a very big meal waiting for them. In other words, an angel learned Torah. He was not very happy. Kachni, the second group left an hour later. Amar Halola bale chavius. They also have big barrels, not as big, but also big. They have to leave so early. Kachlisha, an hour later, a while later, a third group left. Amar Halola bale kat. They have smaller jugs, but still quite big. Katavit, in other words, he frowned upon all of these people leaving his shir to go home to eat. Katavit, Amar Halola bale beginning. He said, these people have a lug. Okay, it's even smaller than a cat, but still quite large. Kat Chamishi, the fifth group, every so often another group left, and the room is becoming vacant. Amar Halola bale kaises. These people have cups. So even though it's not very big, but they're leaving me to go eat. He's chilu kat shishilot. One of the last groups started to leave. Amar, he said, and then he said, Halolu balim eire. Then he cursed more than anybody else. Because when they left, when they will leave, there will be nobody left. There will be nobody left. And why are they cursed? So it brings in the Aruch, because there's very little time in Yom Tov left to eat, so they're not really going to be Kaim Simchas Yom Tov. And nor they hear the whole shir, so they're not really Kaim also the mitzvah of learning Torah, so they're nishtahin. Now, there's a few students still left who didn't have the courage to leave. Noshnu Eina B'Tamir gave them a look. He's chilu pnei mishtan. They got frightened. And maybe they're worse than all of them because they didn't go home to eat. Maybe on the contrary, maybe they was upset with all the other ones for even being there. They should have gone home to eat the mitzvah simchas yom tov. And these students who are still there didn't have any simchas yom tov. Amal and Bonai, my children, I have nothing against you. All of these shiyotu left. Left behind the life of this world, which is Torah. And instead they go home to do a temporary transitory mitzvah, which is eating. B'shas tirasa, when the last group of students finally left, and they were still a bit shaken, he said to them the pasuk which says in Tanakh. He said, "L'chu ichlu mashmanim." This is a pasuk used for Rosh Hashanah, but he used it for all Yom Tov. Go home and eat your fatty food. He said, drink a sweet wine, like send gifts to those who don't have. Today is a holy day. You're talking about Rosh Hashanah. He said, don't be sad. In fact, it says later there, you're not allowed to cry. Interesting. He says, on Rosh Hashanah, don't cry. That your simcha that you're doing for the Eibishter, that is your strength. And that is your strength. Chedvas Hashem, Yisrael Hashem, he was your strength. Very difficult to understand this whole Gemara before we get to what Gemara to talk about is. If you remember Gemara Sukkah, we had Rabbi Lezer said that I praise all those lazy people. With a Chazayim base, I praise all those lazy people that stay home and they're with their families, because on Yom Tov you should be with your family rather than going to visit their Rebbe. In other words, he wants them to be with their families. And here he's upset that they're not in the Beis HaMedrash with their Rebbe. They're learning Torah, what do they go home for to eat with their families? I haven't seen anyone ask this question, but it just seems to be contradictory. Anyway, Amar, he used the expression, so they're going ahead and do their own personal things. What do you mean personal things? Well, it's a mitzvah to eat on Yom Tov. Blazer is consistent with what we had in North Sachin. Simchas Yom Tov Rishus. He says that Simchas Yom Tov having a meal is optional. The time we learn. Blazer says, you have a choice. Either you choose to eat and enjoy and be merry the whole Yom Tov and drink, or you sit and learn. Why does he say that? We'll soon see, because of the contradiction of two psukim. Sure says, Chil Keyu, he's supposed to divide the day of Yom Tov into half. Chetzel Hashem, part to you and part to Hashem. One pasuk says Atzeres L'Hashem Elokecha. One pasuk says Atzeres L'Hashem Elokecha, that this Yom Tov is dedicated to Hashem. Because of Echadayim, there's another pasuk which says that Atzeres Tilechem, but this Yom Tov is dedicated to you. How do you reconcile the two? Rabbi Lezer holds Oy Kula L'Hashem, Oy Kula L'Chem. You have a choice. You have two psukim that are mutually exclusive, so you have to choose which pasuk you want to pursue. And Rabbi Shua saw Chil Keyu, that both of you reconcile two psukim by taking the day of Yom Tov and dividing it into two parts. Chetzel Hashem, v'chetzel Lechem. Half of it's to Hashem and half of it is to you. There was a chassid who used to daven 7 or 8 hours a day, and every time he finished davening, he would say, "Okay, I just finished the chetzel Lechem. Now let me go home and eat, so I can fulfill the chetzel Hashem." Very spiritual person. My lane I give gifts to those who don't have anything prepared. Why wouldn't they have anything prepared? Talk about somebody who can't have food because he didn't make an Erev Tav Shilin, and therefore he doesn't have what to eat. And we'll see more later, actually, that the rabbi of the city, or everybody in the city, can have them in mind only if they did it by mistake. So maybe this doesn't hold of it, or because maybe somebody did it deliberately. Somebody who didn't have to put out the shilling. Didn't have to. If you could have, it's his fault, and therefore you don't have to bring him anything. Hashem, rejoicing with Hashem, that gives you strength. And in what way does it give you strength? In a tangible way. He said, Hashem says, borrow. If you don't have money for Yom Tov Shabbos meal, borrow. Go ahead and borrow and sanctify the day. And believe in me, I will reimburse you. So therefore, that's what Chedras Hashem. If you're rejoicing with Hashem, you're having a nice meal on Yom Tov and Shabbos, Hashem will give you the strength. He will help you out that you should repay all your loans. Talking about another matter, but he also said the name. If you want that your estate should continue to last, is Yitim and Ador. You should go ahead and plant this particular tree called Ador, which is a Hashem. It says Adir B'Modem Hashem. That means that that Adir is something that represents something that lasts for a long time and has strength. So it's a particular tree which is very, very choshev, and people would say, this person has an adar in his field. And so therefore, people will remember that the field is yours because this tree is unique. And nobody's going to be able to steal your field because everyone remembers, it's this person's field. So even if you go overseas and for a while, for a long time, nobody can move in and say and be a squatter and say it's mine, because everybody remembers this field because of that particular tree. And so on. Inami or Adra Kishmei. Adra is literally like a snake. My Adra, the Kaimador Adra means generations. And therefore, if you have such a tree, then the property, the estate will remain in the family hand because everybody remembers whose property it is. We learned can be stolen. The difference between a chamson and a gazlan is a gazlan steals it outright. A chamson throws the money at you, forces you to take the money whether you like it or not, and takes it away. But because you don't really want it, you can always go to Beitza Daf, and everyone can remember it's your field. And the fruits in your field will be protected. Rashi says, I'm not sure what it is. What do you mean? It won't be stolen, but what else do you need to protect you? But he brings one shot here is that they used to plant these trees on the boundary, and because there's so many branches and so on, it becomes like the fence around your field. Or Rashi says that it's actually some kind of grass that it grows with, and its seeds mixes with the other fruits in your field, and that protects somehow or another the seeds. Repel bugs and worms and all those things from eating away. So the Gemara, we'll stop here. We'll continue Mitzvah Yom Kippur. We'll learn Mitzvah Yom Kippur at 8 o'clock.